Melee combat is already a difficult beast to tackle. It's even harder if you want to do it in the first person. So Spartan Fist is fighting an uphill battle against its own initial design decisions. And sorry to say, it's a battle they lost. That's not to say it wasn't well fought. The effort was there, but the game fails to really capture the essence of a good fight. There's no hard-hitting punches or excitement that ever comes. The best mechanic of the game are the fists. With several different kinds, it keeps the punching interesting. There's a stone fist, a rocket fist, a talon fist, and a rat fist, to name a few. Some of them hit harder or punch quicker. There's also a nice nod to Fist of the North Star. The bandage fist even has the attack. You even get to decide which two fists you want to have equipped, which opens up some fighting style options. Maybe you want to have two heavy fists or a heavy and a light fist. They all have fun animations, and I like the style of them all. I'm sorry, but that's where the interesting part ends. The cool fists are rendered moot by the completely lackluster combat. Kind of pointless if using them isn't fun. Mechanically, most of the fists are hard to tell apart. The difference between a swipe and a punch are so subtle, like on the rock and bear fists. Both do the same thing and feel similar when hitting. Also, the fists don't have interesting interplay, which means you can't make up your own combos. The combat is extremely slow and nothing unique or interesting happens. It's a very basic system that doesn't allow for any creativity. I don't find the feedback enjoyable either. While exploding enemies is cool, it doesn't add anything. It happens almost every time and gets stale. Nothing in this game makes me feel like a crazy punching madman. The most mundane tactic is the best. Run up and quickly hit the enemy before they have a chance to attack, and if that doesn't kill them, just back out and wait for another opening. With a dodge available, you would expect the combat to be more flowing, but since it's so slow, there's almost no need for it. There's a bit of stickiness though too. When you get punched, you're basically in it for the entire combo. Spartan Fist doesn't allow you to pull away from enemies once an attack starts hitting you. It can be frustrating when you try and recover from a mistake but are unable to. Another interesting mechanic that misses the mark are the fist upgrades. While they are a cool idea and some are interesting, they just don't have the impact in the game to be meaningful. You can dip your equipped fist into the upgrade to apply it. For example, the spicy dip makes your fist do more damage. The text tells me that, and I know it's working, but it just doesn't translate to how the game feels. If the enemies are already blowing up, adding the damage doesn't blow them up anymore, so nothing really changes. There's a wind one in particular called Gale Dip that I cannot tell what it's doing. It's supposed to add a gust to your attacks that will, quote, blow your opponents away literally, end quote. But even if it does that, now I just have to go chase them down to punch them again. Let's just say it's not great. Something else that doesn't seem to have any impact on gameplay are the stances. You can switch stances on the fly, but they all feel exactly the same to play. There's a brawler stance for fighting large groups, an updraft stance for hitting people into the air, and your normal duelist stance. For as far as I got in the game, there were no large groups to really use the brawler stance on. For the updraft stance, knocking enemies into the air isn't that useful since you can't juggle them. But they can be knocked into traps for extra money. It's all very situational. The only reason to switch stances is when the game forces you to. Enemies can put up a shield based on what stance you're using, and you must use a different stance to break it. It's jarring when you need to switch. For example, when you would expect to finish off an enemy with a punch, they will throw up a shield at the last moment. What a pain in the ass. This creates very rigid mechanics that don't allow the player to keep it fresh and exciting. Another frustrating mechanic is the automatic enemy lock-on. Spartan Fist really wants you to attack one enemy at a time. The auto lock-on puts players in a lot of awkward positions when it locks onto the wrong enemy. Often I've had to disengage entirely to reset it. Getting surrounded can be really strange and takes away any strategy and freedom you would have had with the fight. The lock-on is useful for bosses, which is a one-to-one encounter. However, I found it best to just turn it off anyway because it's more trouble than it's worth. You can just strafe the bosses fine without it. There's one final thing that really irritates me: the way enemies jump up and pummel you after they are stunned. Sometimes you can hit an enemy to knock them down for a few moments. However, it's not clear when they will come out of it. Unexpectedly, they will jump right back up and start attacking you quickly. Then you're stuck in the attack, a bit confused. No one likes when a game gets a few cheap shots in. To put your punching to the test, you move room to room, clearing them of enemies in search of the floor's boss. While the layout of each floor is random, each room has been handcrafted. This is exactly like Ziggurat if you've played that. The room layouts are fine, and even though they contain some platforms, it doesn't really change the fight. Except now that you just have to chase them up and down and do some first-person platforming. Yuck. The rooms do have traps, but I wish there were more. Mostly they're just fire-breathing parts of the floors and walls. It is fun to knock enemies into them, but you can just avoid them easily. Between the rooms though, there are short hallways with a new fist, upgrades, or nothing at all. It seems like they didn't know how else to incorporate finding items into the game. Also, they had to make sure it was available if you skipped a floor. So the option to switch a fist will be less optimal later in the run. The bosses are pretty much the same as regular enemies, but a lot bigger. Strafe around them, waiting for your opening. They hit harder, so if you get caught, it's much worse. The way you keep a run going is that the crowd will throw health pots at you. As long as you're careful and don't take too much damage, these can really keep you sustained. The goal of the run is to collect as much cash as possible. This is what you use between runs to buy permanent upgrades like the floor skip. The rest of the upgrades are really basic though. For example, one increases your max hit points and the other your max stamina. A few of the others will start a fist with an upgrade to give you a slight edge. Overall, Spartan Fist tries really hard but doesn't make it. The combat is the biggest problem. Its overly simplistic and boring enemies make it more of a chore than fun. A lot of the other stuff could have been forgotten if the foundation was enjoyable. I really want a fun first-person melee combat game, but I'm still waiting. Thanks for watching.